Thank you, Mahnaz Ghalib, for joining us and sharing your expertise with us, your passion for gardening and serving this community, and also using all the organic ways to garden and be very passionate about it. Thank you once again. So the first question is, how did you start this hobby? How did you get into doing gardening as your career?
Thank you, Zishan and Umama, for inviting me. I think earlier we were discussing whether people, from the finance background and everybody who's done their MBAs would really be keen and interested in hearing about this. But I think it's something which we need to incorporate in our lives and teach our children. So for me, my background has, as a child, I guess I used to do a bit of gardening with my grandfather. That's where I learned a few things. And he would teach me all about, different seedlings and all, but that gardening was way different from what I have got engaged in. So we used to have malis back home, and we used to just instruct them, okay, ye laga do, wo laga do, and the things used to get done. And we had no idea what native trees were, what was encouraging, a good healthy growth. We would just get the desi खाद आती थी and उधर से आपने पौधे लगवाए, and we would just move on with that. So in 2005, when I came to Canada, my career just took a huge switch. I had little kids to look after, and I didn't want to get it back into a full-time career or job. So I started volunteering in a lot of places at the kids' schools, and slowly I got in touch with the David Suzuki Foundation, and from there I learned something which reconnected me to to a person I'd met back home in my teens, Dr. Iqbal Ahmed, and the same concept about community building, giving back to society, and to build a stronger, community, you have to give back, you have to connect people somehow. He had told us at that time the first thing to do is form a, garbage collection committee, because that was a growing concern and problem over there, which I guess never really happened and took off. And so with that in mind, and seeing the children growing up here in this environment where there was there was so much like their technology was creeping in slowly, and they were just on gadgets and other things, and I saw a lot of fighting and bullying. So the first thing that came to my mind was to get them engaged in a project, and so I got involved with the community garden project, which was both educational, inspirational, and it was meant for stewardship, to look after the land that has been bestowed to us, and we have to take care of it. So that's where the story started back in 2012, and from there on I have been, I guess should say, relearning all the basics of growing plants. And for me, I think I'm more passionate about growing native plants and building habitats, and having, encouraging biodiversity, growing, helping and connecting corridors, and for pollinators, which are all under threat in our zone. I think I was reading earlier today, majority of the population of Canada is in our, Ontario's south, the Toronto zone and all, and we all live here. We have taken over a lot of land, and we have destroyed old growth forests. And the only thing we can do is our share is to give back, and to, encourage native plants, and to rebuild the habitats. That's how I got connected, Nishan.
Thank you, Manas. Going forward, uh, how do we choose a site for gardening vegetables and making a vegetable or a flower bed? Can you shed some brief? Can you tell us about steps and briefs about those steps?
Yeah, sure. So if we can switch to the other side, so there'll be there'll be certain things which you have to keep in mind before you get all excited and say, okay, now I'm going to be the greatest gardener and I'll just grow a lot of stuff. You need to know, what kind of look would you like in your garden? Because a lot of people have pre-set notions about gardens. It has to be either, it has to have the formal look, it has to have the informal look, whatever appeals to you. And most of the people have they prefer a lush lawn in the garden, and they spend like I think a lot of money just keeping the weeds out of the garden. So that's the one type of gardener. Then the other one is could be at the extreme end, who lets just everything grow, and you need to find where you stand in that whole spectrum, like what kind of garden you want. Once you know that, then you need to realize what sort of workload are you looking for. Do you want to be there every single day working in the garden, and do you want to just work once a month or once a week? So that's how you are going to then plan out everything for yourself. And for harvesting, so supposing you just got excited and planted a bunch of tomato plants, you didn't realize that they'll give you this huge yield, and you won't know what to do with all the tomatoes. You're freezing them, distributing them. What are you doing? You're not you're not a commercial grower. So according to the needs of your family, to substitute whatever you want in the house, you want fresh lettuce. So I would just say grow lots of lettuce then. So it just depends on your needs. So from the planning, then you need to go for your site selection. So if you can just switch to the next slide, maybe. So then you need to have a place where you get lots of sunlight. Most of these vegetable plants need at least 6 hours of the deep, intense sunlight which you get in the afternoon. So you have to scout your garden area. You need to see during the all your seasons over the year how the sunlight, where you get the maximum sunlight. You don't want your neighbor's tree to be shading your patch of soil. You may find, oh, this is a perfect patch, and you see it in autumn when you move into your new house or something, and suddenly by spring and summer you realize, I'm just getting no sunlight here. It's been shaded by my neighbor's tree. So you need to first observe. I would say just start small and observe the patch. Start small, have a little bed, and then you can look after it, and it won't be a huge burden. And then once the sunlight issue is solved, then you need to see how the soil is. If there's sod over there, you need to turn over the sod. And when you turn over the sod, you're actually disturbing the soil and the microbial nutrients that were in it over the years. So you have to then fix that problem, and which we can come to later. And the next part is you need to have access to a water source. And you don't want it to be tucked away in a corner of the house where you wouldn't really want to venture out if it's raining, or after a storm. You just need to, like, it could be next to your kitchen door as well. You step out, it's conveniently located, and you can get hold of whatever produce you want from the garden. So and then you need to make sure that the beds are wide enough. So if you're digging into the soil and stuff, or planting inside, you have a place to stand. And if you have to move a wheelbarrow around, you need to have a space between the beds. So there's a lot of planning involved in it. I do it very informally, but people actually draw out a lot of plans, and that's how I guess all the designers and all would help you out. But I am very informal about it. So I just keep in mind how things will be done. And so it depends on what kind of a gardener you are. That's your site selection.
Thank you. Mahnaz, after site selection, which plants do we choose from to grow in our vegetable or flower beds? How do we
Oh.
choose them? And going forward, if after choosing them, do we seed them, or do we buy seedlings or fully grown plants to plant in our sites on our sites?
Okay, so I think that the second part of the question would be ahead, but
Okay.
first we'll have to choose what we want, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you want something for your own consumption, but you don't know what it's going to look like unless you haven't seen the full growth of that plant. You wouldn't know what it's going to look like eventually at the end of the growing season and in mid-season. So what you plant as a tiny seed actually grows into a huge plant sometimes. And you need to have, so depending on the size of the plant, so usually the seed packets come with instructions, or there's so much information on YouTube, on social media and other assets. You can just get information from there. Knowing the size, then you can see, what do you want to add color into it? Like, do you want to have, blocks of green and, interspersed with something red, like, some kind of lettuce or chard. There are really lovely colors out there. There's rainbow chard also. So you add this amount of color in it, so it becomes a bit of a design challenge for you as well. So some of you are more aesthetically, it appeals to you to have the aesthetics in the garden. You can go according to that. And then the shape of the plant. Some of them just grow upright. Some of them are, they're broad leaves. So, like, for instance, like we were discussing, I think rhubarb on our group chat some time back. Rhubarb just takes over, like, it's got huge leaves and it just takes over a lot of space. So keep those things in mind. And then you need to know the heights. So if I plant okra, it grows pretty tall. And I don't want it dwarfing out my other, other plants or tomatoes or something that are growing next to it. So I need to visualize that whole plan. So generally what we do even in our community garden, we keep the taller plants at the back of the bed, and the smaller ones would come in front of it in rows. So it looks, it looks appealing then, more visually appealing. Then you can decide how you would like them to be in rows and blocks. That's up to you in your designing how you. I don't think I can guide you in that. That'll have to come from you, from looking at some picture selections and experimenting. I strongly believe a person should experiment, not be afraid of failure, and just go with the flow. And next, when you've selected your soil, you've selected the site, right? You have you've got the place where you want to grow. So you have to decide whether you want to give it an edging. You want it to be, flushed against, whatever lawn you have. Do you want to try out straw bale containers? I haven't straw bales. People plant directly into that. We tried using it once at our garden. It didn't work out. So we didn't try it again. And then would you like just containers? So some of you who have got balconies could try various containers. Like I think Mama was mentioning, she's got a modular unit, like she's recently purchased. There are a lot of options now out there. So, you can just go on with these concepts before you start choosing what kind of vegetables you want. So I would say start with the easiest that you're all familiar with, would be like tomatoes and basil and lettuce, stuff that you would actually use. There's so many varieties when you go out. Like the first time I went to this place, Urban Harvest, and downtown to buy the seedlings and all, we went crazy. There was so many varieties of everything, and we were like kids, in the candy shop. We were just picking up everything, and then we realized all the things don't work. So you have to get a nice collection of things which will work for you, and don't go for those enticing plants out there. Go for I think go for maybe 8 to 10 plants for your season. If it grows well for you, whatever works, you can try to grow that or expand more in the coming years. So it will be tomatoes, kale, radishes, beans. Beans are really good. Children enjoy picking beans as well. That's really nice. And then you can intersperse that with flowers, and I think we'll come to that in another point. But if you want to go straight to seeds, should we start with seeds? We can skip ahead and go to the slide where the seeds are. So now this is your choice. We are late in the season, so a lot of things won't go. You'll need transplants for a lot of things. So it's late for starting from seed for the summer varieties. So you can just go to a place where they have these lovely transplants growing, and just bring them back in your container or your soil or your the patch of land that you've chosen, and you can directly start planting those. Uh, Earlier, if you start and you want to catch on the season, this your planning begins in December actually. In January, December, you have you have catalogs, you have or these stores where they actually sell the seeds and all. So you have to then choose your varieties, and they'll either deliver it to you, or you just get it in mail order. Then there are seed exchanges that the city holds across. I think it's held everywhere in Toronto, at least, in a couple of places over a period of time in around March and April. So we usually go there and collect some seeds, and give some of the seeds that we've saved from our garden in exchange. Sometimes they sell seeds, so you can purchase the seeds also. The seeds are three types basically. One is the heirloom seeds, which have been passed, saved from generation to generation. They're adapted to the local conditions. They breed true to the parent plant, and you know what you'll be getting. Hybrid, it's usually when it's cross pollinated and fertilized, and then you get it won't be true to the parent, but it could have a different variety. Some people then specifically breed those. So you could hybrids are mostly available in places like, I would say, Costco and Canadian Tire and all. So you could just pick up those hybrid varieties, and if you try to save the seeds, and if you think you'll get the same plant, the vegetable next year, you might be disappointed. So then you can basically, sorry, that question, I saw the comment, so I was just looking at that. So you can choose what you want and slowly switch towards heirloom varieties. They're generally healthier and they're better. A lot of community gardens and a lot of community exchanges, they have heirloom seeds. In our garden, in our community garden, we try to save seeds from the plants, because usually a lot of vegetables get stolen or taken away by, we don't know who takes it away. Some mystery people, and the native plants are the ones that remain. So we save the seeds for that, definitely. And once you decide you have bought the seeds, then you have to start sowing them around mid to end April, especially because the weather is really challenging around that time. So you have to make sure that the soil has warmed up, and you have to have the plants out there with perfect conditions. If you take them out too soon, plant them out too soon, they may just get shock transplant, and then they if there's a danger of frost, they might just die down. And that's what happened to me when I got really excited this year, and I said, okay, let me just take out all the plant seedlings that I have inside, because I didn't have space inside my place with the kids inside all over the house with the lockdown and stuff. So I just said, okay, let me just plant them. If they die, I'll get some more. And so everything died, unfortunately, and I had to go through the process again. So you start the seedlings at home, and I kill all the seedlings when I grow them inside. So they germinate really well, but they die. So everybody had been talking about grow lights in our gardening community, and so this time I bought the grow lights, but they are going to be used next year. I think Dishan was saying he's already used grow lights, so the ones who've had an experience can just we can share the information later, but I would highly recommend having a grow light system. And so that's about your seeds. You've got the transplants ready. If you don't have the transplants, please buy them from the store. And some of the seeds right now can be sown directly. I've planted lettuces right now, and radishes, and beans. And we were in Bosnia about 2 years back, and the watermelon we had was amazing. They have mostly organic stuff there, so I saved the seeds and brought them here, but I haven't successfully sprouted them. I'm waiting. If they sprout this year, it'll be good. So we may have those watermelon this year, but if we don't, then we don't. So I think if we can skip back to companion flowers, maybe.
Companion flowers?
So let's go back. I think this, I don't know what slide this is. Yeah. And
Uh,
where you have choose the vegetables and flowers, that slide for vegetables. Yeah,
no, this site
come
selection.
down. Uh, Another, yes, one. So the vegetables are going to be all mostly annuals, which I guess you all probably know. But some of them they'll come back up, and some of them are freely, they seed themselves freely. So I've dill growing all over my garden. It's coming up through all kinds of cracks and gravel. It's everywhere. So those are things that, that's a reward for you basically, and you can just use that, distribute that, or throw that in the compost bin. Then you have the perennials are like some of them kale and chard. So these are actually not even perennials, they're biennials. So they are supposed to flower in the second year of growing season, and that's when you save the seeds. Sometimes because of too much heat, they can go into flower the first year, but usually it's the second year round that they go into flowering. Um, I think stuff like asparagus and all, they are perennials. We haven't tried growing that yet in our garden. Rhubarb is a perennial that comes up each year. And yeah, that's mostly they're all annuals, like, yeah. And then companion flowers are really, really important to have next to your vegetables, because they attract the pollinators. And yeah, so we're okay over here, companion plants. So the four I love are nasturtiums, marigolds, sunflowers, and borage. These are edible as well. The petals of nasturtiums and borage, you can use them. And once I had this buttercup squash, and it just was not going into fruit. So I was pretty surprised, and I did a bit of research. And so there were just two options: either you hand pollinate it, or you get some, plants, flowering plants next to it. So I planted nasturtiums and marigolds next to it, and soon enough, it worked. There were pollinators there, and it went into fruit production. So you need to figure out what's happening with your plants, and just try to keep on top of issues. If it's not going to producing fruit, what could be going wrong. So this is what I found out, that I didn't have the companion plants. So we in our garden, in my home garden and in the community garden, we just grow tons of sunflowers. And then obviously marigolds they keep away pests as well. And so sunflowers attract a lot of birds, and birds are really good at getting a hold of all the pests and insects and all that. You don't need to use any pesticides or anything if you have a good, healthy relationship going on with the whole. It's a whole ecosystem. It's the soil, it's the plants, it's everything. The whole biodiversity. How are you supporting it? So it becomes yeah, it's an issue whether you are supporting a system or you're getting supplements of fertilizers and pesticides, so which we don't encourage in organic gardening at all. So that's from there. So anything else,
Yes. How do we
Zishana, should we
care?
move on?
Yeah, I think we should. How do we care about our plants, and how to be
Sorry, ma'am.
successful in?
Sorry, Jishan.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
question
please.
So
someone.
yeah, I think it's the easiest thing to do, just plant it and then forget about it. And that's what I've been doing every summer in my own home garden, because we usually go away supporting Ghalib on his, the Ironman journeys and all. And I come back and everything is a huge overgrown mess. And it's like there are weeds everywhere. And so this year, because of lockdown, it's actually going to be the first year gardening at home where I will be able to look after the plants. And even at the community garden, I've been lucky that there have been volunteers around who can help. Somebody I think mentioned where the community garden is. It's in North York. At a walking distance from my house. And the basic thing to do is ensure you have a healthy soil. If you have a healthy soil, the plants look healthy. It's going to grow. Everything is going to grow amazingly well. So healthy soil is, you have to feel it in your hands. You see it. It's going to be brown. It's going to be crumbly. It's going to be like I don't know, like a chocolate, a cake when you crumble it. It's a sort of like that, and it won't look pale, or it won't be compacted. So you have to keep on maintaining it. Like what we usually do is we just aerate around the planted transplants every now and then, like weekly. Godi kehte the back home. So at least our Malis used to call it that. And just you can add compost from time to time. I've even tried burying, the vegetable scraps right directly underneath, at least 8 inches deep, so that the voles and the mice and all don't get to it. That's You don't want to have a healthy population of mice in your vegetable patch. You want a healthy, family of pollinators and butterflies and other things working over there. So the other thing is thinning. So sometimes we just plant a lot of stuff in a row, and we don't, okay, you don't have to follow the rules strictly, but when they say, okay, space it, it means you space it. If you don't space the plants, then they will just all come up together. Once we planted tomatillos, these are heirloom varieties. They're the original, family of tomatoes, and they're green, they've got a husk. Those tomatillos grew in our garden, and they just took over the whole garden. They just kept coming up everywhere. So I would just not have that thing going on again ever. So when we see if you do plant, either you're doing the microgreens, so you have to plant really heavily, all together. Otherwise, if you don't, then you just leave the healthiest, the seedlings, and just, you can be brutal. Just throw away all the others, unwanted ones, or give them away to your friends or family. If the last resort is just throwing them away in the compost bin. So, and the other thing is weeding. So you just make sure you don't allow the weeds to keep coming up. So if it's a healthy soil, the weeds, their job is to fix the soil as well. We always, they get a bad rap, oh, weeds, oh my God, my whole garden is full of weeds. It's okay. Your garden has weeds because your soil is poor. We have destroyed the soil, over all these years of overusing it for our own needs, and paving up every area of land that we see in our in our site. So weeds are actually a sign that something is deficient in the soil, and they are, poor things, are busy adding back those nutrients to the soil, like dandelions. This year my grass is full of like dandelions. I'm getting rid of most of the grass, but whatever patch I have, they give back. They indicate calcium deficiencies sometimes. Some of them will indicate other deficiencies. So don't be afraid of weeds. You can just chop off the tops, and throw them in the compost, and don't let them go to seed. And or you can pull out some of the dandelions. I did that. It's good exercise also. And keep aerating. And fertilizers, I don't use fertilizers honestly, but for home plants, maybe if you have it in the balcony, you might need some. So I'm not an expert in fertilizers. People make compost teas. They use a bit of compost, or some manure. They put it in a bucket of water. They let it sit for about 10 days or something. Some people use comfrey plants as well. So, and then you just use that water to add back to the plants. I sometimes, with my green tea, when it's left over, it's too much, in a pot or something, I save that water and I just give it to the soil. I throw in like eggshells and other things also, just crush them. You save your eggshells and you just crush them and throw them onto your bed. So even the slugs and all, because they have those slimy little bodies, they are protecting themselves, so they are not going to walk over those crushed eggs. It's going to hurt them. So it's good for you. It's a win-win for you. Just have those, and use everything like scraps and stuff. And stake the heavy plants, like tomatoes will literally fall over if you don't. And especially if you're growing those cherry tomatoes, they just flop over and drop, and it's a mess. And you don't want that. You want them looking neat, and you can do a little bit of pruning also here and there, and then you just worry about watering them. And initially, I would suggest, when you put the transplants into the soil, the first 2 weeks, because the poor things, they'll be in a shock. You need to water them really well, maybe early in the morning or towards late afternoon, and just look after them. Maybe even twice a day if the weather is too hot. And the other time they require a lot of watering is when they're going to fruit. So they need to have, the turbidity has to be there, so you can have healthy fruits and vegetables in your garden. Try to maintain the microbial balance by putting in the compost. Make the compost yourself, like have a little compost pile of either leaves, fall leaves, which you all love to throw away. I collect them. I put them in beds in fall, and then I just pull them away during spring cleanup time. I do a late spring cleanup because what happens is a lot of good pollinators, they have laid the eggs and all, and they nest in the cavities of stems and in leaves and rotting twigs and all. So I wait till about end of April, and then I do a big huge cleanup. So you can have that, the leaves, cover it, have a leaf patch, cover it with soil, and then just let it be. And by, in a couple of months, you'll have good soil compost. Otherwise, you can have that layered compost, which I used to have, but then I don't have enough space to keep that whole bin. And once I saw mice, so I freaked out. So I don't have that in my garden. But at the community garden, we have a 3-bin system where we layer it with different like greens and browns and cover it with soil. And then you have to churn it once in a while and water it. So it stays in balance, and it gives you good nutritious soil by the end of the season. The heat has to build up, so you need to either add activators. And somebody was telling me this time you can even add coffee grounds to it. It activates and builds up heat in it. And natural pesticides would be like making garlic sprays or pepper sprays, chili pepper sprays, and even rhubarb leaves, which are toxic to humans and animals. Those could be either they can be mixed with water, soaked in water, and you can use it as a natural pesticide as well. And that's probably how you control the pest population. Have biological control. If you see ladybugs, they're really good. And then a couple of other species will be attracted if you have certain plants, like I mentioned, sunflowers. So you'll get all those finches and other birds, and they will take care of the pests for you. Just use them as your friends.
Thank you, Mahnaz. We can move forward as we are also short of time.
Sure.
Can you shed light? Thank you for providing insights and especially caring for vegetables, because that's the most important thingy while we are gardening and everybody's interested in knowing how to care about their plants. We also saw a question from Homa that she wasn't. She had plants which died after buying them from a garden store. So that it was really detailed, and thank you for answering that question. Coming on to our next question, that is, can you shed light on native plants and preserve for wildlife, and also preserving biodiversity and its importance, and why should we do that?
Okay, so how I got involved with the native plants was I didn't know anything about them. So we used to go for nature walks, and I couldn't identify any plant that was growing in the ravine. I still have a hard time knowing the names of all the trees and all that are native here, because you have to learn up the names eventually. You can't say the big green tree or the pink flower or anything. People will get confused. You eventually need to know the names. So those walks helped out a little bit. I started learning, and then I was inquisitive, I was curious, and I think the David Suzuki Foundation did a marvelous job, like spreading information about the monarchs and how they were just dying down. The pollinators were dying down. It became a huge global phenomena, and people were getting worried because pollinators account for out of every bite of food that you have, like 1/3 of it is due to pollinators. You won't get half the things for on your table if you don't have the pollinators. We don't appreciate them, but they're very important. Now the tricky part for the pollinators is, like, especially the butterflies and all, the larva which hatches out is dependent on the plant. They've bio sort of adapted to each other. So milkweed feeds the larvae of the monarch butterfly, and it will not survive on any other leaf. So it gets confused sometimes. The butterflies get confused because there are a lot of invasive species that were introduced by colonists and settlers when they came to, uh, to Canada and the other places in America. They destroyed a lot of native plants. They did a lot of clear cutting. They took so much, like they destroyed the old growth forests. I mean, I could keep on talking about it, but the important part is people are realizing. There are people who are concerned. They've raised issues about it, and slowly it's coming back, to us. The onus lies on us. What do we want to leave to our, future generations? Do we want to leave a planet which is devoid of all the, green spaces, of the plants, of the beauty of the color, or do we want to encourage people to have a rich biodiversity, which is going to help the whole healthy ecosystem? So what we did with the David Suzuki Foundation was have a homegrown project where few interested people were identified, and they said we were given tasks. How are we going to build healthy corridors across Toronto? So we started working on that. One of the campaigns was just plant milkweed everywhere, but with milkweed, you started doing other pollinator species as well, and people were encouraged to plant native patches. So what we've done in our community garden and what I've done in my own home garden, I've introduced a lot of native species, and they're beautiful. Some of them are really beautiful. They just I don't know why they get a bad reputation, because I guess we are so used to seeing the English gardens and seeing what the French people have done with especially Versailles and all, having perfectly manicured lawns, and because they were wealthy enough, they didn't need to grow any vegetables for themselves, and they didn't have any concern for the environment. They didn't bother with this. But this is a sad thing which we've all adopted, and we have to get rid of that habit, and slowly incorporate little patches in our gardens. So I've added a few names. It's milkweed, there's black-eyed Susans, there's pearly everlastings. The pearly everlastings in our garden used to get decimated by the caterpillars of, I think if you can see the butterfly in the picture, and then they used to bounce back, and they used to have beautiful pearl-like flowers that come up, by summer. And then there's another butterfly milkweed, and there's actually it's not a monarch on it, it's a swallowtail. It's a beautiful butterfly as well. There's coreopsis, asters, and goldenrods, which you see frequently when you're traveling on highways and all, the yellow flowers that they last till fall. But these are gray goldenrods. They're slightly different, and they don't spread as much as those ones. So just adding a bit of these flowers and little patches around your house, that will also encourage the pollinators, the biodiversity, and these animals need corridors. They fly from one place to another. They're not restricted, in one space. We haven't captured them. For them, the whole land is a continuous space. So we need to give them those corridors, and as homeowners, we owe them this much. If you have the space in our backyards, balconies, just plant a little bit of something, and you will be rewarded eventually, and the future generations too. So that's how I feel. That's how my role is in preserving a bit of biodiversity.
Thank you, Mahnaz. Thank you for this amazing session. You've provided insights into setting up a garden from scratch, and that's an amazing session I had. And on behalf of everyone, I'll thank you again. We can move on to the resources, so people, so folks can check those resources, and if they can go and do their own research. At the same time, we have some questions, and the first question is from Nahid. Actually, there are two questions, and she's asking about seeds and brands recommendations from you, and also companion flowers in terrace and pot gardening.
So what seeds is she talking about? Sorry, could If you could just expand a little, which seeds that you want?
She just the exact.
Jishan, can I ask a
Yep.
question directly?
Yeah.
Please,
Yeah.
Naheed, go ahead.
Minav, you talked about catalogs and things, and clearly I've missed the boat on all that. So can you just give us recommendations, ye seeds, for cherry tomatoes or for beans, what seeds to buy? And then if you're doing a terrace or pot garden, do companion flowers matter, or should we also plant, companion flowers in pots?
I think so. That will, because when you're planting anywhere in the containers, like I mentioned, you will get the pollinators up to your balcony as well. And you will get, if they're fertilized like by pollinators, those, your squash plants or your tomatoes, they will be different tasting. They will be really, they'll be healthier and they'll be more nutritious. So, because it's a natural way. So if you follow the natural way in, that's been going on for centuries, and you're going to have a good plant. For seeds, where you're going to get the seeds from, so we used to buy from Urban Harvest, and their catalogs available, which I could share links over here on the site later on if anybody is interested. We don't usually order from the catalogs. Just for me, that was one place. And the second is seed exchanges. Evergreen Brickworks is a huge resource in Toronto. I don't know about Milton and Mississauga and other places. I could check up and get send the information to Zishan, so whoever is interested, or maybe you can just add on to this slide. And the third place to get native plants for us was a bit north from here, and it's called Claremont Nurseries. They have an amazing selection of plants. They have a greenhouse, and that's where we got all our native plants from, most of our native plants. We are in a Carolinian zone. It's an eco zone where, we have the specific plants and stuff that grow around here. So whatever you'll find growing as native plants, it's within our zones, and it's important for our biodiversity and habitats. So the vegetables are obviously, they're not natives or anything. We have been getting them from either from Europe or whatever was developed over here in whatever the First Nations used to use. So that, like corn and other stuff. Naheed, there's so many varieties. I can't really tell you which ones to get. But are you looking for buying seeds right now, or what are you thinking of?
You've inspired me to start a garden. Quite late in the day. So I just want something that won't fail, so I can feel good about myself.
Go for transplants. Apparently, I think it's either, I'll confirm that it's either Home Depot or Lowe's who's working with the WWF, and they're going to get some nice plants out there. I'm not sure if they'll have organic plants. And we can't offer you anything from our garden right now because we don't have anything growing. We just have the transplants from the city greenhouses. So during lockdown, what they realized that there won't be enough plants out there for all the community gardeners. So they just put all the resources in towards the greenhouses, and they have fields of tomatoes and other stuff growing there. So easiest would be right now for you. I guess everybody loves tomatoes, so you can go for tomatoes. If you like either chard or kale, go for chard or kale, and go for beans. And radishes can be grown in quick succession. So every 2 weeks you can plant radishes. They have a good outcome, so you'll be happy with it as well. But you'll have to get a huge stock of radish seeds, and so I'll have to look up where you can get that from. And the third thing would be lettuce. I think I love lettuce. So if you like lettuce, then I would ask you to grow that. Other than that, what else do you like, Naheed? You have to then,
That's more than enough, Mina. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Okay. No
I would
problem.
add to that, if with your permission, Mahnaz.
Go ahead.
For radishes, you can go and buy online mums sprouting seeds, and they're really successful. I've used them last week,
Okay.
and their growth rate is really really high. And
Sure.
you can buy them from Walmart or also Amazon Prime. I went to Waterloo to OSC, that's Ontario Seeds Corporation's retail store, to buy them.
This year you can do that, but for next year's planning, go and get stuff that's either heirloom or it comes from a they host CD Saturdays, so you can get your stuff from there, or Evergreen Brickworks has a great thing, because a lot of stuff at Walmart and all, I feel it might not be organic, so
Yeah.
I don't. And
But
then you can grow herbs also. I forgot to mention to Naheed, go for herbs. Like have basic herbs that you will be using. Like I have mint and oregano, and you can have thyme and basil if you use all those. Go for the herbs also.
Thank you. We can move to the next one. Nahid, I hope your question was answered, and if there is anything, you can always go offline and ask her. And we will also be sharing this presentation with all the attendees and the registrants, so you find your emails with this presentation in a day or two. The next question was from Huma. She was asking about vegetable fertilizing and protecting from pests. And thirdly, she asked about Miracle Grow and definition of that's the three numbers on a soil bag. That's NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So can you shed some light on this?
Okay, so I forgot the first part. She wanted to know about pest control.
For vegetable fertilizers and yeah.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I think earlier, I don't use fertilizers. If you have a healthy soil to start off with, I would really encourage you to build your soil. So your main focus should be on having a great soil. What I did this year, because I knew the soil for my vegetable patches had been neglected. I have dedicated that patch now, because the last few years I've been moving the patch around to please everybody in the house. Now I've just taken up a patch of land, and it's mine now. Nobody can go in. So that soil you need to maintain each year. So starting off with in fall, you can turn in whatever you had grown, instead of just throwing away all the deadheading. When you're deadheading the plants, you're removing them in fall, cleaning up. You can just bury it in that soil over there and let it compost naturally, and the soil will build up. The other thing I would suggest to some people, and we are trying out at a community garden, is hugel culture. In hugel culture, what you do is you dig a sort of a pit, and you put logs at the base, and those logs will serve as reservoirs for water. So once you have done the watering, they will slowly release it to the plants, and it'll sort of decompose because you then layer it. It's sort of like another form of lasagna layering, where you have a layer of twigs and sticks and leaves, and at the base you can have cardboard as well, because that eventually breaks down, and it also prevents the weeds and all from coming up. So I didn't have healthy soil, I did not have the compost, so I ordered soil, and I used less mess, because they have really good quality soil. We've used it like several times, and I've never been I'm disappointed. So you get really good, amazing result with that. But having had that soil, like, try to encourage, build up and use compost. I think I mentioned a method to you, using the leaves and all in fall. You store them in bags or wherever, behind the shed or some obscure place, and then in spring pull it up and lay it somewhere in a little patch, put soil on it, or just lay it directly on your bed, put soil on it around April, when the weather's slowly changing, and by mid-May you'll have this amazing soil over there. So just try these methods. I cannot tell you about fertilizers because I don't use them, and it's basically like potassium and nitrogen and phosphorus combinations, which I guess they started developing after World War II, and then they have to now sell it somewhere. So if you maintain a good organic soil, you don't need anything else. That's my opinion. Unless you're a commercial grower, then you have to be specific. And if you see any little nutrient deficiencies or something, like the leaf color changing and all, then I'll send a link later, and you can look at how you can amend it. Like sometimes with magnesium, just adding Epsom salts will do, and just adding more compost will help, and encourage the soil to get back to its health. You have to encourage microbial enzymes and the bacteria in the soil to grow. We can't kill it with pesticides and other fertilizers and all. We have to encourage it to grow. That healthy soil is going to help you in the long run.
I hope Huma's question was answered. We have another question from Shafaq Hussain, and she's asking, do you know of any community garden where kids can volunteer at?
I think that many, the best thing is to look up city sources. I know that in Toronto, you can look up on the city websites, and usually all the community gardens are listed. We work under the city of Toronto. The land is leased to us, and we are just basically volunteering over there. So that's how it works. This year, because of COVID, we are not hosting anything for children. It's just going to be, volunteers. So it may be the same story in all the community gardens this year. Children might not have a good year this time. So sorry about that, Shafaq. But make them do something at home. They can try, container gardening or some vertical gardening. Use some old, those pop bottles, and try to make something, create a garden over there. There are a lot of resources. I can share those with you. I'll send them. I'll share them on this with Zishan, I guess.
There's another question from Rizwan, and he wants to know how to protect vegetables from squirrels and other animals who can invade, especially lettuce and cucumbers.
So squirrels and other animals are going to be here. You cannot do anything about it, and you have to live with them and accept the fact that they are here. So there's one story where I was really, really upset that year. It happened a couple of years back. My kids gave me, these beautiful, gorgeous seeds for sunflowers. That was the first time I planted them, and I got these beautiful orange, red sunflowers. I'd never seen them before. And I was so happy, and every day I would be out there admiring them. And there was this full moon in fall, and it's called a harvest moon. And I was like, it's only, myth and folklore. But that day, when it was the full moon, I saw a squirrel busy with the flowers, and I said, okay, it's fine. It's not going to do anything. The next morning I woke up, he had decimated the sunflowers, and I was so disappointed. But I didn't get after the squirrels. I said, okay, he wants to share. So it's from the following years, I've just been planting sunflowers, in everywhere. So I am not worried about it. You plant a little bit more for the animals, because they are going to, you cannot stop them. It's not a bubble. It's unless you have a greenhouse, you cannot stop them from coming in. What you can do is like I put fenugreek seeds in between. I have rows of cover crops that I throw in when I'm doing gardening. So when those come up, when those early greens come up, the animals are going to attack them instead of attacking your plants. And just have a little bit extra for them, and so that you are not disappointed like I was with my sunflowers. Was that the only question, or was there something else?
That was the only question, I suppose. Rizwan, I hope your question was answered.
We have skunks in our backyard, and I can't do anything about it. And people have been telling me they're good with eating a lot of bugs and all from the ground. So we'll see how long the mother takes to leave from here.
There's a question from Anahit. Anahit, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Can you speak up? You raised your hand.
Sorry, I was just wondering about watering. I think I kill all my plants because of overwatering. Is there some sort of a magic formula? I know it's a silly question, but I have a brown thumb, as they call it, and just about kill everything, even the hardy plants. So is there a magic to watering, Mahnaz, that you could advise me about?
So do you have a outdoor space? Do you have a garden, or do you have containers?
Outdoor. outdoor, and then in my front porch, you know, where there's a little bit of sunlight coming in. It's an enclosed area, so sometimes I put pots over there as well. But inevitably, I managed to kill them all.
How do you like? Okay, I'm just wondering how you use a normal hose pipe to water,
A
or
little
do you
bit.
have some?
Yeah, no, just watering from my tap and just in a container, nothing sophisticated at all. Just put it in a container and put it in the pot, or put it in
Okay.
a container and then put it in the other flowers. So very rudimentary form of watering.
Okay, so I guess I do the same thing, but maybe there's a drainage issue. Have you ever noticed like does the water, is it waterlogged or something? You can do a little test. You can dig a little patch where you're having most of the problems in the soil. You dig a little hole, I guess, one by one, and 1 foot deep, 1 foot wide, and take a bucket of water, and you just pour it in it, and you see how long it takes for the water to drain in. If it's taking more than an hour, then there's definitely something, your soil is compacted, and you can figure out by making amendments and improving the soil quality by adding compost so that water can drain through more easily, or adjust the gradient so the water doesn't stay. I don't know what the problem is you think it's overwatering, or because there could be overwatering, underwatering as well. Why do the plants get killed? That's an interesting thing. Why
I
don't
don't.
you send me some pictures, or I can
Okay,
then just see what's happening with it, because usually overwatering, um, it shouldn't, like, it rains also, right? And our plants get overwatered sometimes. They don't die. So there's something else maybe going on there.
possibly. Okay, possibly. Thank you, Manas.
You can,
Appreciate
yeah,
it.
no problem. Send me pictures. Be like, if I'll ask Zishan to share my email address, so then you can have any questions. You can just send them to me directly.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Most welcome.
We've reached our limit. That's 1 p.m. and
Okay.
we will stop here. Hard stop. Thank you, Mahnaz, once again, and everybody for being with us and in this virtual session. And let's continue. We'll be having we'll be having a series of other virtual sessions. We'll announce next week about 3 or 4 sessions down the road. And let's continue. Thank you for all of us. If you have any questions, if you want to volunteer, and you can advise us, or you can be part of any session, please let us know and come forward through the email or WhatsApp. You have all our numbers. You can contact me, you can contact Umama, you can contact Kinza, you can contact the rest of the board members, and we can go ahead from there. Thank you. Take care.
So I'm just going to take a minute. Hello, everyone.
Yeah,
It's
please.
Mama. Mahnaz, if you are okay with it, we were thinking of starting a discussion for this specific purpose on our Facebook group, because I know there's still a lot of people who have questions, including myself. So everybody who's here will start a post, like a discussion. It'll be up there, and everyone can share pictures, everyone can ask questions. I guess it'll just help us overall.
Yeah.
We don't want you to be overwhelmed also with like individual questions. So yeah, I'll try and get that started by tomorrow, and
Sure.
then we can take it from there.
So, Umama, you can also share our, Facebook link, and I'm trying to work on the website. If somebody is great on WordPress, I'd appreciate any help with that, but I'm just trying to update that. We have a lot of links on that, and we have a little competition going on. Well, not a competition, it'll be a draw. We have a little seed starter kit giveaway. And if you sign up for that, then by the 10th, we'll have a draw, and you will be eligible for that little kit by the 12th. So I'll share that link with you as well. You can share it with the other people.
For sure. We'll share that. I think a lot of people would be interested. And thank you again for taking out the time. Zishan, you want to end it?
Okay, thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with everyone, and hopefully we'll all have some more green thumbs around.
Yeah, I mentioned in the beginning, before a lot of people are on, maybe our next competition will be based on everyone's garden looks in another 2 months. So everyone, make sure you put in the effort.